Yeah. Hi, I'm Steve Shear from Carleton College, and I'm the co-editor of a new book on the 2012 American elections. I co-edited with Janet Bach-Steffensmeier of Ohio State University. A little bit about the book generally first. It's got 10 chapters with a variety of people who have contributed to it. The first chapter is by two leading political journalists, John Harris and James Hohmann of Politico.com. They write about how Obama put together his coalition and won in 2012. Then we have a wide variety of other chapters on the media, on the Republican nomination contest, on the role of religion in the 2012 election, the role of campaign finance, public opinion in the election, the broader meaning of the election. Did the election produce more political polarization in the country and in Congress? So the 10 chapters cover a wide variety of topics in the election. And I'd particularly like to talk about our chapter, that is the chapter I co-authored with Janet Bach-Steffensmeier. Our chapter focused on the general election campaign, going from the summer of 2012 all the way through the election and attempting to explain the election results, the presidential election results. At the end of the Republican primaries, Mitt Romney had a cash problem and was unable to match President Obama's campaign in spending during that summer, and that was a significant disadvantage for him. Now, at the end of the summer, the American Political Science Association presented the results of 13 statistical models that political scientists had developed to try and predict the outcome of the November election. And of the 13 models, they involved variables like presidential job approval, economic performance, historical election results, differing formulas in the different models. But the models showed that of the 13, President Obama would be the winner in 8, predicted. Mitt Romney was predicted to be the winner in 5. Well, what's particularly interesting, it was the average percentage predicted across the 13 models for President Obama and Governor Romney. It was 50.2% for Barack Obama, 49.8% for Mitt Romney. So this suggested, just looking at the best projections, that this could be a very close election. Well, the actual election result was not as close as the models predicted. Once all the votes have finally been counted, and they have finally been counted, the president received 51%, and Governor Romney received 47.2%. So a slightly larger margin than was predicted by the models. Also, there was a lot of stability both in the margins of victory and also in the geographical patterns of victory between 2008 and 2012 in the presidential election. In 2008, the president had a somewhat larger popular vote margin and a larger electoral college margin. In the electoral college this time, the president received 332 electoral votes, needing 270 to win, and Governor Romney received 206 electoral votes. The main switch between 2008 and 2012 in terms of which states were carried by which candidates involved two states flipping from President Obama to Governor Romney, making it a somewhat closer race than in 2008. Those two states were North Carolina and Indiana. But otherwise, it was a victory larger than predicted by the political scientists. Now, one thing Jan and I try and do in this chapter is explain the outcome. Why did this result occur? And we would say that there's a combination of short-term and long-term factors behind the Obama victory over Romney. So let me just briefly go through a variety of short-term factors that we think helped the president win this election. First, late campaign events seemed to help the president. We had Hurricane Sandy off the East Coast, which allowed him in the week before the election to appear presidential and bipartisan, because he was accompanied in his survey of the damage by New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, a Republican. We also know that late deciders broke for the president over Mitt Romney. That doesn't always happen, but it did happen in 2012, which suggests that late events may have helped the president. A second factor that we think led to an Obama victory was the superior Obama campaign to that of Romney. Now, I've already suggested that they were better funded in the summer, and that was a big advantage for the president over Mitt Romney in the summer of 2012 because he was able to have superior messaging in key areas and key states to that of Governor Romney. But also, there were a number of strategic and technological advantages that the Obama campaign had in 2012 simply weren't matched by the Romney campaign. They were able to buy ads more cheaply, run more ads in more markets. They were much better positioned to use social media and to contact people through social media, Twitter, Facebook, etc. One other thing that the Obama campaign had a big advantage in is that they were much more intelligent in their use of interpersonal contact with voters. They developed new techniques for matching social media contact and interpersonal contact that really had no rival on the Republican side. So by Election Day, the get out the vote effort of the Obama organization was vastly superior to that of the GOP and Governor Romney. A third factor that we think helped the president win this election is that in the months leading up to the election, the public mood gradually improved. And there are several indicators that the Gallup surveys found really helped the president. For example, his job approval slowly went up from the mid-40s to just over 50%, which, by the way, is where he ended up in the popular vote. Economic confidence gradually improved over the course of the autumn. The number of people identifying as Democrats gradually went up over the course of autumn 2012. All those things put a little wind at the president's back, and in a closely contested race may have been the key. The fourth thing we'd point to, and I've already alluded to this somewhat, the GOP campaign had a variety of problems, and there were some mistakes by the Romney campaign. For one thing, the president's campaign really focused and concentrated its messaging organizationally so that there was one central control for the messaging done on behalf of the president via advertising, candidate appearances, etc. Republicans were not organized in that way. Their messaging was spread out in a variety of places. There was the Romney campaign, there was the Republican Party, there were a bunch of independent campaign spending organizations, all of which were running ads, all of which were trying to contact voters. There was no real central command strategic control that rivaled the central command and strategic control of the Obama campaign. I've already mentioned that the Romney campaign largely went dark in the summer and really lost a messaging advantage to the president during that time when they weren't running adequate ads. We also know that Mitt Romney had his share of verbal miscues over the course of the fall, the most famous being his 47% comment, where he suggested that 47% of the public were dependent on government and would never listen to him, and he would not try to appeal to them. It's always a mistake to write off half the electorate and have that known as a public campaign message. One of the key mistakes for the Republicans is their assumption about who would vote in this election, and that actually allows me to get into the next question, which is what were the characteristics of the electorate? See, Republicans assumed that about 74 to 75% of the electorate would be Caucasian white Americans. The Obama campaign assumed that it would be around 72%. The Obama campaign was right. The Romney campaign was wrong. And so the whole strategic calculation of the Obama campaign was based on a much better understanding of who would actually be voting than was the case with the Romney campaign. When we look at the actual vote, we can see that there are four groups that were particularly important for the Obama victory. African Americans turned out in large numbers, and Obama received 93% of their vote. There was an increased turnout of Latinos, and the margin for the president, it was 71 to 27% over Romney, a bigger margin than the president enjoyed over John McCain 4 years earlier. This was a big failure of the GOP and Mitt Romney. Young voters went 60 to 37% to the president. Not as big a percentage as in 2008, not as big an edge for Obama, but still a significant edge. And highly educated voters, those with post-grad degrees, and that's a high turnout group, actually voted 55-42 for President Obama. Again, a smaller margin in 2008, but still enough to win. Now, although Mitt Romney won whites by 20 points, 59 to 39%, and by the way, that's a bigger margin for the GOP with whites than was the case 4 years ago when John McCain was the nominee. But as I mentioned, whites were only 72% of the electorate, and that was a percentage lower than what the GOP had hoped for. So with white turnout down, overall turnout was also down. In 2008, turnout was 62.2% of the voting eligible population. This time, it fell by 4.4% to 58.7% of the voting eligible population. Now, a couple historic characteristics of this outcome. Barack Obama is the first president since 1932 to win re-election with a smaller percentage of the popular vote than he won by when he was first elected to his first term. It's also unusual for a president to win re-election with lower turnout than in his first election campaign. Why the lower turnout? Well, I think one reason, Jan and I talk about this, one reason we think is that the campaign messaging in 2012 was very negative. Some studies have been done. 85% of the Obama ads on radio, television, and so forth, 85% were negative. 91% of the Romney ads were negative. And negative ads can give a lot of people reasons not to like either candidate, particularly when they're seeing negative ads for either candidate. Finally, when we look at the long term, what does this election result suggest for the future of American politics? And Jan and I would point mainly to the demographic characteristics of the electorate and how America is changing demographically. We know that the number of Latinos is growing and that their percentage in the electorate will continue to grow. Now remember that the president won 71 to 27, and it's going to be very difficult for the Republicans to be competitive in presidential elections if they're only getting about a quarter of the Latino vote, and the Latino vote continues to grow as a percentage of the total vote. Another problem for the GOP is that young voters still are strongly Democratic. The president received 60% of their vote, 66% of them voted for Obama in 2008. That's a big margin, and these are the voters of the future. Now, Mitt Romney and the GOP did particularly well with older voters, but older voters won't be around that much longer. And they are going to be replaced by an electorate that is more Latino and will include disproportionately more of these people who are now under 30. Those are growth areas for Democrats, and that's very good news. Now, having said that, you have to keep in mind there are a whole bunch of other variables that affect election outcomes going into the future. When we look to 2016, who are the candidates? How well they run their campaigns? What are the issues? What's public opinion about the state of the country? All those things are up in the air for 2016, and it's in those areas that the opportunity for Republicans lie. But in the meantime, the GOP has to figure out how to solve its big demographic problem. And to us, that's the biggest long-term lesson of the 2012 election.